Newton, that's great. We'd like to move to Astrid Köhler, who is part of the European SPA as a transnational meeting place. And Astrid is part of this European initiative. It's an initiative that is based in different countries. Astrid is specialized in historical elements of spa towns and spa culture. And so spa towns are not just for bathing or healing. Historically, they were also for networking, discussing important issues. Politicians would go here, royal communities would go here. But yeah, Astrid Köhler can talk much more about what the spa town has in store for us. So please, Astrid, could you share your wonderful presentation?
Thank you very much, Willem. Thank you. Can everyone see my screen? Hello, everybody. Just to say, I'm here as just a representative of this project. You see the website underneath my name. So we are 4 principal investigators, Christian Noack, Wiebke Kolbe, Henrike Schmidt, and myself. And we started working together in 2019. Our first project has finished, but we are working on follow-ups. Now, let me give you an overview of the European spa history tradition and an idea of what we think is happening and should be happening now and in the future. For many people, talking of spas in a contemporary context will evoke images of beauty treatments, massages, pampering, and all sorts of interesting therapies that help us de-stress, detox, decrease our maladies. In short, the word is redolent of the growing wellness industry, which is busy producing individual wellness and serenity on a mass basis, and is therefore a contradiction in itself, so typical of our present times. The word spa is, of course, the name of a town in Belgium, known for its healing waters since at least the Middle Ages. The name was adopted by the English language to denote all such places that owe much of their history and reputation to the existence of a mineral well with acknowledged powers. Yes?
Sorry to disrupt you. We don't see the next slide. So we're still at the European Spa Culture Then and Now, an introduction.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about this. Can you?
Don't worry, it's just technology. We'll get there.
Okay, do you see the initial slide now?
We have now the full presentation. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I had arrived in Spa, in the Belgian town of Spa. Do you see the Spa sign now? Which gave its name.
Yes, thank you.
Institution. Okay. Quite importantly, until very recently, the denomination of spa did not refer to a small confined treatment place, but to fully fledged towns whose infrastructure was designed entirely around the needs and desires of the visiting patients. May I ask you, do you see this old map now?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. Often they were small and essentially rural places, expanding over the summer months with several times more visitors than locals and contracting again in the winter. To the trained eye, these are easily recognizable by their layout and architecture, with their bizarre mix of grand metropolitan building styles and an eminently rural and picturesque environment. When studying the history of spas, we actually engage with a whole complex of histories, such as the history of medicine and science, the history of belief systems, the changing relationship between social classes, patterns of urbanization, the history of attitudes towards nature, the history of travel, the advance of the nation state, the history of gender relations, the origin of the welfare state, the history of consumptions, the emergence of the service industries, to name but the most obvious. Human attempts to utilize the health-related properties of water can be identified throughout history and in all cultures in one form or another. Medicine in all its historical stages has always included water therapies. And interestingly enough, the taking of the waters is the only form of therapy that has survived all these different historical stages, from the belief in the water's magical or sacred powers through speculative and experimental medical practices to the modern science of medicine, and also to newly discovered alternative forms of treatment. To this day, spa treatments are seen as combining therapy, prophylaxis, and pleasure, and it is the specific combination of medical treatment and sociability that constitutes the classical spa experience. Already Hippocrates, who is often referred to as the father of both medicine and of balneology, regarded health as something that had to be achieved actively by us humans through a balanced way of life. It is thus no surprise that the ancient Greeks and Romans started to use springs not only to regain but also to keep their health. Thus, many spas were frequented by healthy people who would combine bathing with physical exercise, rest, leisurely walks, conversations with fellow bathers, reading, drinking, eating, and the like. All activities then that helped maintain said healthy balance of life. Margarita Dritsas claims that ancient Greeks made bathing as important as literacy. It cleansed, cured, rejuvenated, beautified, gave pleasure. Despite the work of Hippocrates and others, the healing powers of individual springs were for a long time ascribed simultaneously to religious experience and to magic forces. That best manifests itself in the notion of the fountain of youth, which included both Christian and magic elements, and which was a popular motif in literature and art until and beyond the advent of modernity. What you see here is Lucas Cranach the Elder's famous painting, The Fountain of Youth, from the mid-16th century. And indeed, to a large extent, mineral springs were used for want of any other more effective cure and for want of the medical knowledge required for this. As there were enough individual cases known in which taking the waters had helped, a growing number of books appeared, endeavoring to list the different waters and their reputed effects, and underpinning these lists with case studies. The waters of Wiesbaden, for instance, were said to be good for the abdominal organs and for rheumatism, those of Schlangenbad for all sorts of skin conditions, and Karlsbad's waters meant to cleanse the stomach and help treat diabetes. What the Greeks and everyone else did was mainly bathing in hot and cold springs. Drinking the water is a generally younger practice, which was introduced in the course mainly of the 17th century and became dominant in the 18th. Bathing was not abolished then, but drastically reduced. So bathing and drinking sort of swapped position in terms of their perceived importance. Underlying this were discussions about the permeability of the human skin, and hence the ability of the body to absorb the water by way of bathing. And the opinion about this has changed several times over in the history of spa use. But this shift in medical theory and practice had significant implications for the rhythm of spa life and the infrastructure and atmosphere of spa places. bathing in the water had taken several hours a day, between 4 and 10 hours, and left the spa guest little time to do much else. Drinking the water, however, was meant to be done over a longer period of time, yet took up much less time of each day. The new spa regimes were part of a larger dietetic regime that embedded the taking of the waters in a clear daily routine and combined it with mild physical exercise, such as walking, as we see here, as well as conversation and company with others. What this meant was that sociability was made an integral part of the treatment, and the medical discourse invoked and linked up with the social one. Looking at the histories of individual spa towns, we can see that they were either drastically reshaped and extended or newly created around 1800. It was in this context, for instance, that the promenade and the hotel in the modern sense were developed. Likewise, the Kurhaus was created, a combination of pump room and assembly hall designed to accommodate different group sizes and to enable guests to combine the drinking of the waters with a wide variety of sociable activities and entertainments. The current PowerPoint slide shows some of the institutions that were erected in mineral spas all across Europe: theatres, concert facilities, Kurpark, and Kurhaus. The sociable aspect of the cure was further strengthened by an opinion forming among leading doctors. Physical, and around 1800 again, it's kind of late Enlightenment, physical and mental health were taken to be interdependent, and the general welfare of people was regarded as having a significant influence on their health. A famous proponent of this opinion in the German lands was Christoph Wilhelm Hufeland, who from our current perspective can be described as having been an academic doctor and natural healer in one person. This way of thinking also meant that while the individual was expected to live an all-round healthy life, the state was required to make this possible and thus guarantee everyone their much needed rest between times of work. We can see how this paved the way for the social medicine of the 19th century and for laws that would later guarantee employees their annual holidays. It is not surprising then that the number of spa guests increased drastically over the course of the 19th century, and that they came from increasingly broader and more varied social backgrounds. Spas were characterized by a considerable social, cultural, and national mix of the people they attracted. Likewise, from about 1800 onwards, the mineral spas were joined by seaside resorts, which initially were designed along very similar principles with promenade, park, and kurhaus, just that here it was the bathing in the cold, salty water that was seen to be beneficial for people's health. Between this and this PowerPoint slide, you can also see the transition from the bathing carriage, the Badekarren, and to swimming. And indeed, both spas and seaside resorts increasingly combined their function as health providers with that of holiday resorts. Now, we know that in the course of the 19th century, academic or school medicine made enormous advances, and in return, the natural healing methods used in the resorts were devalued. Both mineral spas and seaside resorts were increasingly regarded as mere tourist destinations. However, they still were the refuge for those whose ailments could not or not yet be cured by the school medics. Owing to the process of industrialization and urbanization, and due to the profound impact this had on all spheres of life, a series of new diseases arose among the population, generally attributed to the crowded living conditions in the big cities, the worsening pollution of air and water, and the increasing levels of noise and stress in people's daily lives. Top of the list of these diseases was tuberculosis and what was then called neurasthenia. In 1854, the physician Hermann Bremer opened his Heilanstalt für Lungenkranke, sanatorium for lung diseases, in the Silesian mountains. This was the advent of a new resort type, the climatic spa, which was again designed along similar lines as its forebears, and of which the most famous one was to become Davos in Switzerland. For almost another century, there was no scientifically proven way of healing tuberculosis, and physical rest, sun, pure air, and nutritious food seemed at least to improve patients' conditions. And even though Robert Koch had discovered the cause of TB as early as 1882, antibiotics capable of actually curing it only became available in the 1950s. The institution of the sanatorium, that is a combination of hotel and hospital in which patients lived and were treated, also served to accommodate other ailments, such as the whole range of nervous diseases. Often, these sanatoria were located in classic mineral spas, such as Georg Grodek's Villa Marienhöhe in Baden-Baden. And they used the infrastructure of the spas, of course. Moreover, natural healing was rediscovered and became increasingly popular for dealing with the growing number of diseases of the industrial era. In the German-speaking context, this was particularly prevalent, and I only mention here the so-called Lebensreform and the teachings of Sebastian Kneipp. We've just seen some of that, whose water cures reinterpreted old balneological knowledge from the spa tradition. All of these developments are themselves now confined to the past. And yet, if we take a grand overview over the history of health resorts, as I have just done, we see that they have always played a significant role in public health provision, if only for giving relief to those whose diseases could not or not yet be cured by scientific medicine and pharmacy. Whilst the ailments for which the spas and other resorts were used have changed drastically over time, the fact that such ailments exist has not. Given that we now live in the era of long COVID, I need not tell you that there is no end to this diagnosis. And the fact that today's event is thematizing the increasing physical and virtual stress affecting growing proportions of the population is just another case in point. Accordingly, we see a re-emergence of the old tradition of spas treating the untreatable, and only a very brief look through the net has given me a good number of mineral spas and seaside resorts offering long COVID treatments. And even more resorts offer retreats to combat stress-related health problems. However, I have mentioned in my overview that from the very beginning of spa culture, prophylaxis was an important aspect too, as was a holistic view of health and indeed a sociable one. Body and mind are best be brought into balance with each other, where the individual is part of a larger group and where it gives and receives impulses to and from others. Many health resorts today are caught between the traditional aspects that shaped them in the past and the new demands of our neoliberal society that foregrounds the economically active individual at the expense of community and inclusivity. In other words, they are at the crossroads between providing what I call wellness, that is wellness for the paying individual, and promoting well-being as a public good. To those resorts that see their future as part of the latter group, I should like to finish my talk with 5 strategic recommendations. 1. Reinvent the holistic concept of the European spa cure at the interface of medicine and sociability. 2. Revive the narrative of transformation and societal mix in the resorts and diversify your target groups. 3. Repurpose the spa town's therapeutic landscapes as learning and experimental sites for dealing with contemporary challenges, not just people's health problems, but also, for instance, climate change, which of course in turn affects our health. 4. Open up the resort's infrastructure to new users, for instance, by offering spaces in which the generation of digital nomads can combine work and treatment or prophylaxis. And above all, make sure you present the spas not as spaces of an imagined glamorous past, but as laboratories of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So amazing. Well, this is the answer to my prayers, our prayers. We work a lot with hospitality on this issue, obviously. And we never know exactly how we can break out of the current scenarios. So thank you so much. This was, I was really in university with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.